With the latest movie of Baki and Kengan coming out, it made me realize just how interconnected the two series are, right? I mean, both series really love combat, both series really love training and pushing themselves to be the best versions of themselves, right? But if you really think about it, Baki and Kengan have two different, like almost like opposing aspects to themselves, right? So in Baki, you have more of like an individualism kind of mindset where it's almost like you're isolated in your training, you're isolated in your thinking of like getting strong and progressing. But when it comes to Kengan, a lot of the focus on the story writing and the things that they make us focus on are the interpersonal connections, the relationships with the fighters and the representatives, right? So we form these bonds in Kengan with the representatives and the fighters where they have different connections. Sometimes they're like almost like best friend like, some are just more purely business. But even the purely business relationships, they have a lot of respect there for the fighters. There isn't any pawn usage a lot in Kengan. It's almost a lot of partnerships when it comes to the corporation and the fighter. And it makes really good storytelling, because at least when the difference between Kengan and Baki is in Baki, when you are seeing a fight, one, you can kind of like predict what the fight's gonna, how the fight's gonna go, because Baki, I mean, it's almost like straightforward in a way of like, it's almost like a Dragon Ball Z type power scaling, where like if you just have more ki, you win, right? And Baki, if you have more speed, more power, more technique, you win. Not always. Typically, there's some outliers, but typically, like if you're just simply more powerful, you'll win in a swift attack, right? Kengan's not the same. Kengan, it's a lot of different small nuances that can affect your win or affect your loss. You can't really predict entirely who will win in Kengan, and I think that is a really great aspect of Kengan, is that mystery aspect to it. But when it comes back to the relationships, it's good to see the differences, because you can see why you're attached to the two different series, right? If you think about it, you can think about like, why do I like Kengan? Well, it could possibly be the connections, or it could be the characters and how they're portrayed, maybe their motivations, or strictly just the way they fight, because there's so many different fighting styles in both of the series. But the connections is I think is the main thing that make them different, right? Is how they approach connections, because at least in Baki, most of the connections that's formed is through fighting, through exchanging fists, making each other bleed and feel each other's pain and kind of like anguish in a way, right? But in Kengan, it isn't always communicating through fists. It's honestly, I represent this company, you represent this company. We're in a tournament. We're gonna try to find out who wins. But it isn't so much communicating through fists. It does happen, but at least with Baki, they really emphasize it, and that's really, honestly, the really important thing here, is to understand why you like both of the series and understand the differences in them. And it's honestly really cool to sit back and reflect on everything that the series brings to us, and like the direction that it's going in. Because I mean, with the recent collab movie that they have, regardless of the power scaling, regardless of whether or not Baki, I mean, we all know Baki is stronger than Oma and whole Kingdomverse. He can solo them, but it was the love that it brought, right? It has nothing to do with who should have won, who's stronger, who's not stronger. The point is, bruh, is the fact that these two series are like almost like yin and yang, right? They go together. They're basically like canon in a way, right? I mean, they both have crossovers, and it's really interesting. It's cool. There's a lot we can pull from Kengan and Baki, with just like how we should move in our life, or how we should think about conflicts in general. It makes us really think and reflect about all the cool and good things. But Baki and Kengan are a special series. You know, Kengan Ashura and Kengan Omega, both of them. I mean, it makes you really understand connections really well, understand combat better. You know, maybe have an appreciation for sacrifices and choices made. You know, understanding the different mindsets that the characters have between the series when they're in a pickle. You know, when they're in a pinch, how they act, how they react, how they actually function when they're against the wall. All those are interesting things to see, because we can see that in ourselves, right? We've all been in situations where we were in a pickle, we were in a pinch, and we may have not reacted how we wanted to react. We may have, you know, not enacted exactly what we thought we were going to do, but it's okay, because watching these series and, you know, watching combat in general, we can kind of get an appreciation for that type of sacrifice and that type of diligence to overcome fears and kind of like, you know, take on the task head on and not even, be phased with the potential ramifications of it. So I think it's really important to kind of like identify these isolating features that these series have that can really make you understand and appreciate the series in general, right? So when it comes to Kengan and Baki, I would say that Kengan really excels in the relationship building, and then Baki excels obviously in the combat, especially in the narration of the combat, because it really emphasizes how much skill it takes to perform each attack. And I think they're breaking down and taking your time and letting us, the viewer, know as specifically as possible how this attack is happening will make us really understand and appreciate, you know, the volume and the potency of the attack, and that makes the attack and the fight just so much more, tense. And I love that, right? And even though Kengan doesn't do too much of the, descriptive storytelling, like I told you, it excels in the relationship building, right? Because in the fights, there's always almost like a tipping point where the fighters have to decide whether or not they're going to continue to fight and bring, 100% all they have, for the win, or they figure out real quick, what do they really prioritize? What is really, what they're going to be thinking about when they're potentially about to die. And it's just really beautiful seeing kind of like organic connections and reactions to things. It makes you really, reflect and think about yourself. And these series are, really powerful and special in that way. And it's really cool and an honor to really even read and indulge in it, or even talk about it. So y'all leave your comments in the down below and let me know what you think about both of the series and my combat and, just different aspects of it in general. All right, bro. Y'all have a good day.
Penny X.